check out ESPN Film's newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Happy Friday, kiddos. Thanks for tuning into The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here, getting you to the weekend. We are live again at NABJ. We are in New Orleans, Louisiana. The National Association of Black Journalists annual convention and career fair. That is the noise you hear behind me. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to holler at me? Get at me on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Obviously, NFL big news today. Ezekiel Elliott suspended 6 games by the league for what we're going to call a violation of the personal conduct policy. Let me just tell you straight up, there's a lot to get into here. We've got a multitude of factors to discuss. Number one, what happened in terms of how the NFL decided that they were going to try to suspend him. He's going to appeal, obviously. Number two, how this affects the football team itself. And number three, we are going to have to discuss this, the entire conversation around how we deal with athletes, accusations, domestic violence, and assault charges, and so forth. We're going to get to all of that today. Understand that. At some point soon, we're going to take some phone calls on what you think about this. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. But let me get to the details. Look, the announcement ends an investigation that started more than a year ago. His ex-girlfriend accused him of domestic violence in Columbus. The Columbus City Attorney Office announced in September that they were not going to pursue charges because of conflicting and inconsistent information. Those of you who remember what happened, she told some friends to say something to police that did not happen. That friend did not do that. Once that came out, it basically went to say that this woman was a liar and dishonest, and therefore everything that she mentioned possibly could not be true. Well, that's not what the NFL's independent investigators found. Not remotely. Now, I'm not going to read through every single letter of every single conference call, but we're going to get to it. Pete Harvey, he's the former New Jersey Attorney General, on the conference call, he broke down a lot, all right? He just discussed how they went through the evidence, what happened when they did find what they did. Let's start with him talking about the significance of the photographs that she took.
There is an eyewitness here. The eyewitness is she is a victim and a survivor. She took photos of her injuries. As the league examined the metadata in the phone with respect to those photos, the league discovered the date on which those photos were taken. And they were taken the same day as Ms. alleged she was injured by Mr. Elliott.
Okay, so where we are with that. The photos, they didn't just look at them. They did the obvious digging. Now, if you're wondering why, let's just say, a courtroom in a law couldn't find that metadata and therefore use it in that scenario, well, they don't have the same time and resources. It's just not the same thing. And if you hit me up yelling and screaming about how if a court of law didn't do anything, there's no reason the NFL didn't do anything, we are going to have a problem. All right? The threshold is different, and it should be. Peter Harvey, once again, the former New Jersey Attorney General, he said also Zeke's witness situation was a little dicey.
We also examined as I said before, the submissions offered by Mr. Elliott's representatives, and one thing that was significant to us was many of these people offered affidavits. They declined to be interviewed by the NFL's investigators, which raised suspicions in our minds about the veracity of these witnesses. In at least one of the affidavits that I reviewed, the the information was different in the affidavit than the witness gave to NFL's investigators when they talked to this particular witness.
If nothing else, we can take away that the NFL was taking this seriously. We were wondering for a long time, well, what's going on? Why haven't we heard anything? It's been a year. These details are pretty intense. And if it turns out that Zeke's got his boys up there basically just assuming that, frankly, his male privilege is going to get him something, that's not a very good look. If you don't want to be interviewed by the people who are trying to figure out what actually happened, it is reasonable to assert that you either don't know what you're talking about or you're making it up. And if it comes down to a he said, she said, well, that matters. Pete Harvey, again, he said that every single thing that Zeke's lawyers offered up as possible reasons of how this woman got these bruises were basically just theories.
We also, the arguments made by Mr. Elliott's representatives, and the arguments seemed to be theoretical. They did not seem to be supported by any witness, any document, any other substantive evidence.
And this is also important because it gets to, and I brought this up earlier in the program, it gets to the reason as to why people don't report things. It's because your name, your reputation ends up getting sort of dragged out there through these theoretical discussions of what might have happened as opposed to addressing the matter at hand. Some would say that's a relatively slimy way to do things, but that's also how things operate when you're trying to defend your own name. You throw out a lot of possibilities to obfuscate the potential truth and lead people to doubt what may or may not have actually happened. Let's hear one last thing from Peter Harvey, the former New Jersey Attorney General. On the NFL conference call, he expanded on this notion of theoretical arguments.
Mr. Elliott's representatives argued in a meeting, maybe Miss fell downstairs. There was no witness to say she fell downstairs, and there was no photograph of her falling downstairs. Mr. Elliott's representatives suggested that maybe because she was a server, what is called bottle service, maybe she bumped into tables. There was no witness who and bumped into tables while serving anything. Mr. Elliott's representative suggested that maybe she was in a fight with another woman and the bruises, for example, a bruise to her eye and perhaps other bruises on her body were sustained in that altercation. Mr. Elliott's representatives also suggested that maybe someone else did it, except there was never someone else.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates filling in here on a Friday live from NABJ in New Orleans. We're talking about Zeke Elliott. We heard from Peter Harvey, who was part of the four-man independent investigations panel that the NFL employed. Look, if nothing else, this looks very bad for Zeke. As a dude, as far as his judgment is concerned, as far as, frankly, the strategy his lawyers and representation used to try to defend him, I think it's fair to say that Zeke Elliott officially has a reputation problem. And we haven't even gotten into the St. Patrick's Day situation yet. He's a star in this league, and he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm sure Jerry Jones, that owner, is fuming because there's no, as he would say, actual proof. Or as others would say, pardon me, Jerry Jones did not say that to my knowledge. But these details, as far as I'm concerned, are extremely damning. The picture that's being painted here is that Zeke Elliott's representatives basically just tried to find as many people as they could to say, well, we never know what might have happened. Which is entirely possible. But as somebody who is not in the position of making this decision and just looking at it, as an observer, doesn't smell right. And if you're a fan of the Cowboys beyond just the football that they play, this is another situation where you've got to make that judgment call about the guy you're rooting for on the field on Sundays. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Give me a phone call. This is an important day, I think, because it allows us to talk about a lot of different things. Not many of them have to do about football, but we're going to get into that later. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday, live at NABJ from New Orleans, Louisiana. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to get in touch with me, hit me up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Taking your phone calls here, 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Let's go over quickly what's happening here. Ezekiel Elliott suspended 6 games by the NFL as a result of violating the personal conduct policy. There was a situation around a year ago that happened with his girlfriend in Columbus. There was another situation that unfolded on St. Patrick's Day involving him exposing the body parts of another young woman. And the real core issue here is the NFL and their consistency in this matter. We'll remember what happened with Ray Rice. And I think any person, no matter what you thought of how they dealt with that situation, would say, or what you thought of Ray Rice, would say that the NFL bungled that badly. There was one suspension, then a video came out, and things changed, and all of a sudden he was out of the league. The order of operations there drastically altered how Goodell handles domestic violence situations and has going forward. Understandably, if I may say so myself. It was August of 2014 that happened with Ray Rice. He was suspended 6 games at first. Then all the other evidence came out, and it was like, actually, you're done. They were not going to have this situation again. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. All right, y'all. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Larry in South Carolina. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Tremendous. You're on the air.
Hey, yeah, I was wanting to make a comment about Ezekiel Elliott, about the fine and the punishment they handed down to him.
Go ahead.
I know this may not necessarily be the situation, but they really don't have any. They're going by circumstantial evidence, and all the charges was dropped on him, in a court of law. And I actually was around 2 friends of mine one time. It was a guy and his girlfriend. They were sitting there arguing, and they got a pretty heated argument. There was no licks were passed, but all of a sudden she starts ripping on her dress and starts hitting herself and calls the law. Law arrives. I tried to sit there and tell him, hey, I saw the whole thing. The guy never touched her, and they were like, well, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm both of their friends. And from then on, he didn't want to hear a word I had to say. And the
Thanks
guy
for the
ended
phone
up
call,
going to
Larry.
jail.
I got to cut you off here because that scenario has nothing to do with Ezekiel Elliott. You cannot just extrapolate that because we do not have a Zapruder film for what happened in that bedroom that someone is lying. I'm not going to go off on this tangent right now just yet. But when it comes to accusations of violence and sexual assault, I'll tell you my personal stance. I believe women. 1-888-729-3776. That's 1-888-SAY-ESPN. Sean in Arizona, what you got?
Hey, Clinton, this is insane, man. You guys haven't done your due diligence. It took me 3 minutes to find the affidavits and the text messages from this woman to her friends asking them to lie for her, and the affidavits.
Those were acknowledged. Thank you, Sean. Those were acknowledged in the conference call from Peter Harvey. He said as much in the conference call. He admitted. I will read what he said. You asked whether or not she made a misstatement and a false statement. Yes, she did. Her false statement that was revealed was she accused Mr. Elliott of yanking her out of a car on July 21st. Really, it's the morning of the 22nd because I think it was after midnight. That did not happen. And she did ask one of her friends to tell the police that it did happen, and the friend had the good sense not to do that. That is true. But as to other statements that she made, both to the Columbus DA as well as to NFL investigators, she was absolutely truthful about them. And by the way, the Columbus prosecutor knew about that false statement and still said to our investigators that he believed her, and he believed that the injuries that she articulated to the Columbus DA's office were caused by Mr. Elliott. So don't come at me with this nonsense about how, oh, y'all didn't hear about that? No, they heard, fam. They acknowledged it, and they disregarded it because the larger concern was more important. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Nick in Phoenix, what you got? 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. George in Florida, how are you?
Yes, sir. I think that obviously Zeke Elliott has shown some poor decisions. We see that on a multiple basis right now. However, I think the NFL is opening themselves up. It's a very precarious situation when they start doing what they're doing right now and they start taking someone else's word, whether they made the right steps to inform the police at the correct time. If they're not taking in formal statements from both parties on either side and making their decision on that, I think they're opening themselves up to more of these things happening when players are coming into a major business that's millions of dollars on their sides. I think they're playing
Thanks
with
for the phone
fire.
call. But they did try to take both sides' statements and views. It was Zeke Elliott's people that did not want to talk, officially and on record. Take what you will from that. Everybody who she brought seemed to have the same thing to say. When he brought witnesses, or when his representation brought witnesses, it sort of clammed up. Clinton Yates filling in here for Bomani Jones on the right time on ESPN Radio. We're live in New Orleans at the NABJ Conference and Career Fair, talking about Zeke Elliott and his 6-game suspension and how that's going to affect the Cowboys and how that's going to affect how we talk about domestic violence in this league, amongst other things. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Derek in Fresno, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Happy Friday, my man. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. I'll take your comments after I get off the phone. To me, Ezekiel Elliott, he needs to grow up. It's like he has a straight maturity problem. He thinks that, I'm with the Cowboys. I'm a millionaire. I'm above the law. I'm above Goodell. I'm above you and me. And it's like now it's come to bite him in the butt. And take the suspension as it is. Gain some accountability, whether it's 6 games, whether it gets reduced or not. Gain some accountability and move from here. I'm thinking it's like hopefully this will be the one and only time that this happens to him, because if it happens again, it's like it's going to put a bad name on him and also the Cowboys as well. And I'll take your comments about that off the phone.
Thanks for the phone call. There's one problem with that logic. Number one, it already is bad. And number two, the NFL deduced this was not the only time it happened. I'm not going to jump all over the boat and say that Ezekiel Elliott thinks better of himself than anybody else on the globe. I don't know him. I've met him once. I was covering an event in which the Ohio State football team visited the MLK Memorial in D.C. We shook hands. He had his championship ring on. Talked to the coach. He seemed fine to me. I'm not going to extrapolate on what he believes of himself because I don't know that. What I do know is what was found by these investigators in the NFL. Do I agree that he probably has a maturity problem? Sure. Who didn't have a maturity problem? I'm 36 years old. A lot of people tell me I have a maturity problem. But that's not correlated to whether or not he is prone necessarily to violence directly, or anyone is for that matter. Does the young man need some guidance? I would hope so. But there is also a victim here. That needs to be understood. Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Coming up, we're going to talk with Albert Breer about what's next for Zeke and the Cowboys. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
I'm Doug Brown. The NFL hits Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott with a 6-game suspension to start the regular season. The league investigated for more than a year after Elliott's ex-girlfriend accused him of domestic assault. This is the 16th suspension of a Dallas player in the last 4 seasons. The Bills make 2 trades today. They send wideout Sammy Watkins to the Rams for cornerback E.J. Gaines, and they send corner Ronald Darby to the Eagles for wideout Jordan Matthews. Buffalo also picks up 2nd and 3rd round draft picks. The Ravens say quarterback Joe Flacco won't play in any preseason games, but he is expected to be ready for the season opener. Flacco is recovering from a back injury. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports Redskins linebacker Trent Murphy will miss the season with torn ligaments in his knee. He's coming off a career year with 9 sacks. Second round of the PGA Championship, Kevin Kisner holds the lead at 8 under. Hideki Matsuyama 3 shots back at 5 under. Jason Day and Louis Oosthuizen both at 4 under par.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the program appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me. A lot of interaction today on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Right now on said Shell Performance Line, Pennzoil Performance Line, is Albert Breer, senior reporter for the MMQB. He's got a story, headline, Ezekiel Elliott suspension, what it means. I'm just going to ask you off top, Albert, your general reaction to the number of games that the NFL gave Zeke as far as the suspension is concerned.
Well, it's a lot based on the evidence they have. And I think that there was a feeling in Zeke's camp that they had strong evidence that nothing happened. And, there was obviously 2 sides to the story. And I think, the decision reflects that that the league believes the woman over Zeke. I think the severity of the punishment reflects that they are not going to go easy on anybody when it comes to domestic violence again. And, I think this is sort of fallout from what happened with Josh Brown last year, where they erred on the side of taking it easy on a couple of guys, and then more evidence came out afterwards, and they wound up looking really bad on the back end. And so, to me, this is, again, kind of a player that I don't think that they trust based on his pattern of behavior in the short time he's been a pro. And, he stepped into an area where they're going to be really, really sensitive now because of what's happened the last few years.
Albert, the due diligence that the NFL did here, I will go so far as to say, was impressive. They did a lot here. What Peter Harvey had to say on that conference call, I thought was in-depth. I thought it was straightforward, and I thought it illuminated a lot about how this process worked. Do you think most people are going to look at this as a fair evaluation from the NFL?
I just think that in this particular case, there's a lot of gray area. And again, some of it's hearsay, and you have to believe what you're going to believe. And it's pretty clear the NFL believed the woman and said that, the pictures of, with the scarring, that showed up during a period of time when Ezekiel Elliott could have been the only one who did that. And so, I think it's certainly, you look at the body of evidence here, and again, there is that gray area. And this is more of a 51-49 type situation than a 90-10 situation, which is Zeke's camp is acting the way it is. But I think the intention here is with a very prominent player, again, in an area where the NFL has failed multiple times in the last few years, that they're going to come down on him, and they're going to say to everybody, we're going to turn over every rock if you're involved in something like this. And if there's something there, we're going to find it. And we're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you're involved in something like this. I think as much as anything else, because of the high-profile nature of the player and the team involved, I think this is an opportunity for the league to send a message. And you know what? I mean, good for them. They've messed up in this area a few times the last few years. And, if this is a way to send a message to other players that this isn't going to be accepted anymore, and you're really putting your career at risk if you're involved in something like this, then I don't think any of us can say that's not a positive.
We're talking with Albert Breer, senior reporter at the MMQB here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in live from New Orleans. at NABJ. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. We'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal, even if it's not with us, saving you time and money. Now, that's Progressive. Call or click today. Albert, my next question is about what this means for the team itself. We've seen reports that Jerry Jones is furious. There's also the factor of whether or not they're going to appeal the suspension. What do you think the likelihood is that this appeal actually works and gets it down to a certain number? And do you think Jerry Jones is going to have anything to say about this himself in public?
Well, I think Jerry Jones is going to come out and say a lot of the stuff that he's said over the last couple of months, which is that this punishment doesn't fit the crime, and they're going to appeal it. And look, I could certainly see a situation where this gets, that there's a conditional reduction of the penalty where, if he meets certain guidelines, then maybe it gets cut down from 6 to 4, or 6 to 2. So I think that's certainly possible. As for what it means for the team, I'd start on the field and tell you that I don't think it's going to derail the Cowboys offense. They've got still one of the best offenses in football coming back. They've got 2 offensive line positions that they've got to replace. And obviously, Dak Prescott going into year 2, the environment's going to be a little different without Zeke out there. I think where it could hurt them is, if they go from great to good on offense, which I think is certainly possible. They've lost so much on defense, and they've rebuilt their defensive line and rebuilt their secondary to the point where they're going to have to be pretty good on offense to carry a younger, rebuilt defense over the first few weeks of the year. And so I can certainly see that hurting them. And then the other Cowboys have been here before. They had a great year in 2007, collapsed in 2008. They had a great year in 2010, or in 2009, collapsed in 2010. And then they had a great year in 2014 and collapsed in 2015. And you see some of the same elements coming into play here where in the past they haven't handled prosperity all that well. And, this, of course, I think puts them in a position where they're at risk for that to happen again.
Do you think that the Cowboys' history of suspensions played a part in this as well? Never mind Zeke, the team itself.
Well, I think the risk they've taken in the past certainly does. I think that's something that, part of this, of course, right, was like, why is this taking so long? And that's not fair to the team. Well, I think what the league would contend in a situation like that is, with this particular player and with a lot of players who are involved in situations like this, you knew what you were getting yourself into when you drafted him. So that's part of the deal. And so you're going to pay the price for that. And, I think that this is a team that's obviously taking risks in the past. You can go back to the 90s, when the teams that, the Michael Irvin, Charles Haley, that group, and then, more recently Pac-Man Jones a couple of years ago, Greg Hardy, a team that's, been willing to take players that were risks in the past. And Zeke certainly came into the league that way. And, I think because he's playing in Dallas, it's a little bit of a tougher environment for him because he came in with those questions, and that's not always the best place for at-risk guys. And so, it could be a little bit of a message, too, to the Cowboys that, when you bring guys like this who have some stuff in their past into your program, you're certainly responsible for part of it.
Last thing I'll ask you, do you think the Cowboys can make the playoffs if Zeke is actually forced to sit 6 games?
Yeah, because I don't think the division's any more close as strong as it was last year. Look, the Redskins aren't where they were last year. They've lost both their coordinators, both their starting receivers. They went through the whole situation with their general manager. Their quarterback's in another contract year, so you can certainly see them taking a step back. And the Giants have offensive line issues. They were tremendously healthy on defense last year. Does that hold up another year? The Eagles have questions in their secondary. It's just every one of the teams in the division's got serious questions. I don't think the division is going to be quite as strong as it was last year. And so if the Cowboys can tread water and, say, go 3-3 over the first 6 games, I think they'll still be in a position to come on strong with Zeke back over the last 10 games of the season and win the division, because I just don't think that there's going to be a team that's going to run away with it with 12 or 13 wins.
He's Albert Breer. He's a senior reporter for the MMQB, and he's all over the Zeke Elliott situation. Thank you, Albert.
All right, thanks, Clinton.
Coming up, I'm going to take more of your phone calls on Zeke Elliott. It's an important day in the NFL in terms of a lot of different things. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on the right time. Handcrafted. It's all the rage. From flour-pressed soap to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles, whatever those are, well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on. Because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926, and their 4,000 ASE-certified technicians work hard every day to help keep cars running like new. Before people were making organic greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basement, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, wrenching. And they back that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right and your repair is priced right and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive, fam, drive a Firestone. Offer valid August 10th through October 8th, in-store only. Claim form required, excludes Blizzak. Restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card is issued by the Bancorp Bank, member FDIC.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to hit me up on Twitter, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. It's the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. We're live in New Orleans at NABJ. Had guests coming through all week, and once we get to the next hour, we're going to have some more people who you might have heard of. But first, we're going to continue this conversation about Ezekiel Elliott. A lot of y'all in my mentions. I'm sorry, I'm busy hosting a radio show, so I don't have time to roast y'all on Twitter like I normally do. I will get to it during the breaks. Understand that. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Brian in Montana. Flip the coin, kid. Come get destroyed.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. What you got?
My only comment, Clinton, is you come across like all my friends are right now, just typical cowboy haters is the way you're sounding. I mean, my only thought is this, is where's the confidence in the criminal justice system? I mean, if there was any evidence, I guarantee you a prosecutor is going to take that case and they're going to prosecute him, and I'd be fully supportive of that. But if he's never been even prosecuted, let alone proven guilty, how can the NFL jump to these conclusions? I just don't see it.
Thanks for the phone call. It's 2017. You're asking a black man in America where the confidence in the criminal justice system is? Are you serious, fam? Forget about this case. Let's take a look at any number of cases across America, like perhaps the ones that one Colin Kaepernick had a problem with. Asking me if I have confidence in the justice system in America? Sorry, stupid question. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Cam in Syracuse, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, man?
I'm tremendous.
So I'm going to try and get through this as quick as I can, and I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible for every single moron out there that doesn't seem to get this. I grew up in a home where my dad beat the crap out of my mom. I grew up with that. I know what that's like. I've seen that all my life. I've seen how victims don't report things, and when they do report things, eventually it starts to look bad for them maybe. So what do? They drop it, or they let it go. Even if there was every single reason to have that happen, they're going to just not want to deal with it. Because this woman, guess what? She was the victim. Does anyone else seem to understand that? I was not a huge fan of yours, Clinton, until today. This woman has been dragged through the mud. She's been made to look like a liar because she made one false statement, which, by the way, how many times have you told your buddies or have anybody else said, you know what, just say this for me? Well, guess what? She did it on the wrong thing. It doesn't mean that the forensic evidence that is in there, it has been forensically proven that the bruises came from those altercations, that it came from those things. You can tell me she fell downstairs? No. That's what every abuser says. And every abuser doesn't get that they're abusive until someone comes and points it out. And guess what? The next time Zeke does this, which hopefully it doesn't happen now because everyone knows that he's abusive, the next time this happens, she might not be just hurt. She might be going out in an ambulance, or she might be going out in a hearse. So people get that through your head.
Thanks for the phone call. That was the best phone call of the week, kiddos. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Quickly, Cody in Michigan. How are you?
Doing good, brother. Hey, I completely agree with everything the last caller said. I just wanted to make one kind of point here to see if you think the NFL is setting a new precedent by
Zeke was kind of in that limbo area. He was no longer at Ohio State, but he wasn't quite yet drafted in the NFL, but they're punishing him under the NFL personal conduct policy. So is that something we're going to see more of in the future? How does that affect, say, like a Joe Mixon? I mean, how is this a different case from that? It's kind of what I'm wondering.
That's a very good question. I appreciate it. And I think that is a tough place. I mean, if you want to look at everything sort of on the whole in the context of fairness, it's a difficult thing to say that you can get punished in the NFL for something you did when you weren't even a member of the league. I don't love that. But ultimately, I don't care about the sort of theoretical concept of fairness in the NFL as much as I do about victims. If it comes to domestic abuse or sexual assault, yeah, that needs to be addressed by the league. Sure, it might not be the most, according to Hoyle, just thing in your mind. Not you meaning you the caller, I mean in one's mind. But if the league has any interest in moving beyond the reputation of being a place where men who are completely out of control are allowed to do whatever they want and still make a paycheck, if they want to move beyond that, they're going to have to address what guys do in college or after they're out of college before they get into the league. It is worth it from a PR standpoint whether or not I agree with how they do it or not. This scenario is the best I've seen the NFL handle something like this in a long time. They got the people in there to do the investigation. They spoke about it in public. As far as I'm concerned, this is about as transparent a thing as I've seen from the league in a really long time. And I'm not really into praising the NFL for much of anything. And I'm not necessarily doing it now, but I will say, got job well done when there is a job well done. We'll see what comes of the suspension. But you can't say they didn't do their due diligence. Coming up, Bill Rhoden's here. We're going to talk to him next. I'm Clinton Yates on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to The Right Time Podcast. Please come back Monday for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Check out ESPN Films' newly released 30 for 30 podcasts. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcasts to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
Welcome to The Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
The bad guy's back, kiddos. Thanks for tuning in to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday, and ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And if you want to get in touch with me, the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed is a good way to do it. At ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. You want to give me a phone call, 1-888-729-3776. That's 1-888-ESPN. Joining me on the couch right now, legendary New York Times columnist, now with the undefeated, Lion and legend in the game, one Bill Rhoden. Hey, Bill.
The great Clinton Yates. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you. Look,
great to be colleagues.
We've been bringing people through all week, talking about their experiences here at NABJ. We are live in New Orleans on the floor. That's what you hear in the background for those of you just tuning in. Talk to me a little bit about your role with this organization and how long have you been coming to this bad boy?
Yeah, man, it's pretty overwhelming, Cliff, for those not here. I mean, I walked into the job fair. My first thing was, geez, man, I'm glad I'm kind of at this end of my career, not this. Gee, I'd be like Tom Brady, man, looking for, how do you cheat? How do you get the edge?
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, man. But, no, I think my first one was 1982. I was at the Baltimore Sun, and I remember meeting, Dwayne Wickham and – no, but it's just overwhelming. I mean, it's evolved. I think that's the key thing for a lot of young people to take away is that how do you build something that can grow like this? I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's 30, 40 years, something like that. So, no, it's just, like I said, it's overwhelming. But to see all the young black and people of color here, I just keep saying it's great and overwhelming.
No, I get it.
But it is. I mean, it's really it's encouraging, actually.
Did you do any panels?
I did the one panel, the Charles Barkley panel on the intersection of racism and something like that.
Well, how did it go? What was it like?
It was great. No, it was a great panel. You know, Charles was Charles.
Chuck is Chuck. Yeah.
I was me was me. You know, and these panels, man, say, man, you do your thing. I do my. You know, you get to deliver separate speeches. You know, he says this thing cool. Well, this is my speech. What was the question? Who knows? This is what I came to say.
Fair enough.
But it was cool. Yeah.
We talked with Steve Weish yesterday from the NFL Network, the guy who Colin Kaepernick first talked to about when he sat before he kneeled in protest of what was going on in this country. And one of the things that I brought up was, hey, you were the only brother in that locker room as a reporter. And I said, look, that's why it's important to understand diversity in newsrooms isn't just about for posterity's sake. It's about getting the story.
Yeah, exactly.
And on merit, it has its advantages. You work with fellows now. Talk to me a little bit about what you've experienced over the years in terms of the importance of having black folks and folks of color in the newsroom from a merit standpoint.
Yeah, well, it just makes things better. It just makes business sense to have people. When they say people of color, I always make a distinction. I mean, people of color is fine, but I'm very specific
to black folks.
I want black folks because people can say, oh well, I've been in press boxes, man, where it's been like no black folks.
Right.
And they go, oh no, man, Bill, it's really diverse. I mean, where are the black folks? Well, Bill,
right.
You talk about color too much. So I said, well, that's what I'm interested in. I want to see Clinton Yates. I want to see, and they said, well, yeah, but and just getting back, you look at the undefeated.
Yep.
And so with Kevin Meredith was against them, he could have probably hired about 21 talented black folks. Got Justin Tinsley. And
Aaron Dotson was just hanging around.
And I mean, there's so many there's so many bright talent. But the problem is you got people who are pushing at the door, who are not hiring. Particularly in our industry.
Right.
And that's what makes it bizarre when you have all these. Like, there's a sister over here who's like into analytics.
Right.
And she couldn't get a gig in the NBA. And they were hiring guys who had. She's got they had no bachelor's degree, but this is the NBA, which is like almost 70% black players. So,
there's a lot to happen, and it's interesting here when you come also to NABJ and you see all these talented people and you wonder how it is they're not in the business, but that's the world we live in.
Right.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. Bill Roden is with us. The Right Time is brought to you by Firestone Complete Auto Care, keeping cars running newer, longer, whatever you drive a Firestone. Just a quick point of clarification on what happened with the Zeke Elliott situation. The disciplinary decision was in connection to Elliott's actions between July 17th and 21st in 2016, which means he was drafted. He wasn't in the league. So I was getting a little loose with there. Basically, he hadn't played a game is what I was getting down to. But he was on the team and in the league. Bill, you've heard us talking about this for a little bit, and you've seen a little bit of the news. What do you think about Zeke Elliott and how the Cowboys have gone about this and what this is going to do to their season?
Well, I mean, look, he gets to play. See, and here's the thing that's kind of connected to Colin Kaepernick, right? Now, Colin Kaepernick ain't playing. This guy, he serves suspension. I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jones pays the fine under the table, okay? But the bottom line is he's going to play.
Yeah.
He's going to be running the football. He's going to get his body ready. And then October sometime, he's going to play in the NFL. And after he didn't allegedly beat up somebody. Colin Kaepernick did not beat up anybody, but the owner said, no, brother, you would have been better off if you would have beat up your girlfriend. Then you could have probably whatever, we let you play football. But no, you made this statement about justice and that kind of stuff. No way. So I see the Ezekiel Elliott thing through that prism that, hey man, you're gonna still play football.
Right.
We're gonna let you play football. You're gonna slap your hands. Your owner's probably gonna pay the fine. And
you're gonna carry on like normal.
And you're gonna carry the football.
Where do you think we are in terms of the Colin Kaepernick situation, though? I mean, personally, like I said, we had Steve Weish on yesterday from the NFL Network. He said he doesn't think anybody's going to sign him. I think that there is now a legitimate football reason not to bring him onto your team simply because it's so late, and unless you have a massive hole I'm not saying you got to change up your whole offense for him because I don't believe that, and I think that's nonsense as well. But there are certain teams that can handle him and cannot. I could understand why a team would say this late in the game we can't handle this. What do you think is going to happen in terms of Kaepernick possibly getting onto a roster or not?
Right now, it seems like nobody is going to snap. See, they're pretty locked in. I think, though, where we should really be focused now is on the NFL Players Association.
Okay.
To me, this is a labor issue. You cannot let a member of your union, whether it's the Teamsters or be treated like this by management. And the NFLPA has been deadly silent on this. And that's the NFLPA's problem. They're always silent on the big issues, on the important issues. Dead silent. Tell me something. In fact, I was just on the phone with somebody at the NFL today. I said, man, the most we got to say something.
Right.
You just can't let a guy like this hang in the wind. So I think that in an ideal world, what I would love to see happen, Richard Sherman has started to say some things. I would love to see senior members of defensive units, or some unit during the season do like a one-quarter protest and just not take the field, or wear armbands. Say, you know what? Because this could be us. And trust me, Clinton, if that kind of stuff, I don't give a damn if it's the middle of the season, whatever. If that kind of thing happens on one opening day or in the middle of the season, 32 defensive units, which, by the way, defensive units in the NFL tend to be almost like 98% black. And if these brothers decided to take one series off, or to not start the game, now, two things are going to happen. The owners are going to fire the entire defense.
Right.
They're going to fire the entire defense, bring everybody out and flog him, or they're going to say, okay, how do we fix this?
Right.
You want us to give Clinton, you want to give us Collins a chance shot. We'll bring him on the roster and cut him. Y'all happy? Yeah, we happy.
But the statement will be made.
The statement's made.
Along those lines, last thing I'll ask you about this, Bill, is what do you think about this notion of protesting at the league office? I happen to believe that there is the cause of getting him in the league. There's the cause of what Colin is trying to do. This strikes me as a tad misguided, but it's got a lot of support. Spike Lee, retweeting it or announcing it, that's something. It's outside of the NFL. You've got to believe that that's going to have some traction on some level.
But it's not. It's going to have traction, but it's not going to have an impact. And I think sometimes, man, we get into vaudeville and show business, and you hop in on these these issues. And my first thing is that now it's kind of gotten into show business,
right?
And vaudeville. Is it going to have a fun? Trust me, if you had players who actively say, okay, you know what, we're going to do something by not doing something. Now all of a sudden people. But because remember, there was a protest at the NFL office maybe about 3 months ago, and it was like he still ain't playing.
Right.
So it's almost like this is one of them. It's kind of like people saying stuff at your funeral. It's like it doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with Spike. So I'm with you on that.
He's Bill Rhoden. You know his work for years from the New York Times, and right now he's with the Undefeated. He's a legend in the game, and I thank him for joining us. Thank you, Bill.
No, my pleasure.
Coming up, Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys, has some explaining to do. We'll talk about that next. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday, live at NABJ, New Orleans, Louisiana. Guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. If you want to hit me up, do so on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Been talking a lot about the Ezekiel Elliott situation and his suspension. There's another character involved in this saga. His name is Jerry Jones. He owns the Dallas Cowboys. Last month he seemed pretty confident about, Zeke potentially playing. Let's hear his words about what he anticipated or didn't.
I don't want to be too proactive about how I feel because that's not going to make any difference here at all. What I don't want to do is hurt things about how I feel. And so that's that. All I've made my comments based on is all knowledge that I have.
So when you say there's no domestic violence, when you look at the other things, you can say there's not enough there with other things for a suspension?
I do not anticipate a suspension.
That was from last week, Jerry Jones. Clearly he was wrong about that. But before, when they opened training camp, Jones said, I have reviewed everything, and there is absolutely nothing, not one thing, that had anything to do with domestic violence. And then he went on to say, my opinion is there's not even an issue over he said, she said. There's not even an issue there. I mean, look, I don't mean to laugh, but in the face of everything we just saw come out from the NFL, that was obviously a bald-faced lie. Like, I don't know how you can square saying that none of it was about domestic violence if the entirety of the issue was about that, and the independent investigator said as much. I mean, that is literally just turning a blind eye or being willfully ignorant of what actually went down or didn't go down. But come on. This investigation is thorough, my guy. This has not happened in a way that one could not say was transparent. Could say was not transparent. I don't know that I've seen this much discussion around a domestic violence case in the NFL pretty much ever. Peter Harvey had a lot to say. So if you're Jerry Jones at this point, you know, look, I don't want to say that he's intentionally being dishonest. I don't know that. Maybe when he was in Oxnard, when training camp first opened, there were things he didn't know. But when he comes back last week and says, I don't anticipate a suspension, well, Jerry Jones doesn't have a very good grip on what's going on with the league office, which is shocking to me because Jerry Jones is one of, if not the most powerful owner in the league. He's got the biggest stadium in the league. He's probably the owner that if he walked down the street would be most identifiable as who he actually is. And he's also got his own personal history regarding personal conduct. You can do that when you're an owner. That's how that works. I just wonder whether or not Jones is going to end up being a factor in how the rest of this appeal situation works out. You could tell from the tone of his voice in that last clip that my man is a little bit more reticent to sort of talk. He said as much, and that's understandable. If he wants that guy on the field, he's going to keep his mouth shut. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. The Right Time is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL insider, said on SportsCenter today that there is something that Jerry Jones can do.
It could set into motion a series of events that could pit Jerry Jones versus the NFL if he wants to pursue legal action. That'll be something that'll be next because now Roger Goodell has sent a message that Jerry Jones is not bigger than the league and that Ezekiel Elliott, despite the fact that Jerry Jones has said there is no evidence of any domestic violence in this particular case, the league has gone ahead and suspended Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games.
All right, look. If the NFL becomes a league where owners of teams start suing the league for disciplinary actions based on personal conduct policies that are negotiated by all involved, I'm sorry. That is scuttlebutt that I am not interested in. I mean, come on. Legal action? I'm no lawyer, obviously, and I don't play one on the radio at all. I do my best to stay out of courtrooms. But I don't understand where the lawsuit factor comes into play here. If you want to call me up and explain it to me, please do. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Shannon in Chicago, what do you think about Jerry Jones?
Hey, Clinton and Shannon, enjoy the show. I listen every day. Shout out to Bomani and his absence. Jerry Jones, man, he said what he said because Jerry Jones is rich. And rich people can convince themselves of whatever they want to convince themselves of because they're rich. You don't even have to have reasonable explanations. You don't have to have concrete evidence. You don't need anything that makes any sense all he wants to do is make up his own mind, just like he thinks he's a great GM and he's not. This is what he does, so this is why he said what he said.
Thanks for the phone call. Jerry Jones is a pretty good GM, man. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about there. He's not great, but he's a pretty good GM, particularly one for an owner. Last time I checked, they got a bunch of Super Bowl rings that he made moves on. I don't need to sit around here and knock Jerry Jones' executive ability. But I think there's an argument. I mean, there's something to that call. You know, if you're used to being in power and you're used to everybody sort of making decisions based on your own opinion, well, then, yeah, you probably are a little bit misguided when it comes to reality. I did Mike and Mike a couple of weeks ago with Booger McFarland, who said that he didn't think that the NFL was going to do anything in the time span around Jerry Jones getting into the NFL Hall of Fame because they didn't want to embarrass him. So they waited. I don't know if there's any veracity to that personally, but this has got to sting a little bit if you're Jerry Jones. You just went into the Hall of Fame. You just celebrated your whole legacy. Less than a week out, one of your guys ends up getting suspended for 6 games over something that all of the dirty laundry was aired on. He cannot be happy. I certainly don't feel bad for him. But he's got a situation he's got to handle because what he said made 0 sense. Coming up, how are the Cowboys themselves reacting to the Zeke suspension? We'll talk about it. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on the right time on ESPN Radio. Handcrafted, it's all the rage. From flour-pressed soap to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles, whatever those are. Well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926, kiddos, and their 4,000 ASE-certified technicians work hard every day to help keep cars running like new. Before people were making organic greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basements, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, wrenching, and they back that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right, your repair is priced right, and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now, at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive a Firestone. The offer is valid August 10th through October 8th, in-store only. The claim form is required. That excludes Blizzak. Restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card is issued by the Bancorp Bank, a member of FDIC.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. We are live at NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana, on the floor of the convention and job fair. Been pulling people in all week to talk about what they think of this event, and it's been a fun one. Guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Joining us right now is Clarence Hill Jr., columnist at the Dallas-Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Clarence, let me ask you straight up. How is the team reacting to this situation, not just in terms of the suspension, but in terms of how this franchise is getting treated by the NFL?
You know, it's a shock to the team, and certainly Jerry Jones was upset and very angry about the situation. He didn't see this coming. You know, there were reports of 1 or 2 games maybe. Jerry Jones didn't think there would be any games. No one saw 6 games coming. You know, the team was blindsided by 6 games, and I guess hopefully it will be for their sake, it'll be reduced to 4 upon appeal. But 6 games is almost a death sentence, you know, for the Cowboys in hopes of building on what they did last year, going 13-3, and hopefully taking a step further this year and possibly making a run to the Super Bowl. But yeah, it's shock and awe here with the Cowboys. They didn't see this coming.
How do we square the fact that Jerry Jones stood up and told a bunch of people not just that he didn't see a suspension coming, but that this whole thing had nothing to do with domestic violence, and then all this investigative stuff comes out and it's pretty much only about domestic violence?
Yeah, I don't see. I want to know what report Jerry saw, because he told us over and over again on a number of occasions that there would be no suspension. There was nothing there. The NFL had no case, no cause for suspension. He told us that last week at the Hall of Fame several times. He told us that from the start of camp, going back to last year, there was no domestic violence, no case, no suspension, and here we have 6 games. And so it'll be interesting to know what report Jerry saw, but because I was on the conference call talking to the NFL, and from what they said in their independent panel, this was all about domestic violence, and they got credible evidence that suggests that Ezekiel Elliott did commit domestic violence against his former girlfriend.
We're talking with Clarence Hill Jr., columnist for the Dallas-Fort Worth Star-Telegram here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm filling in here on a Friday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options and pick the price that works for you. This is going to be sort of a strange question, but I think you might be able to answer this. Is there any point at which Jones and the Cowboys feel any sense of shame over this? I understand he's angry, but this franchise has taken so many risks on so many players. Is it possible that this is the one that is even viewed internally as, for lack of a better term, embarrassing?
I mean, internally, they all believe, and most people who around here believe that Elliott needs to make better decisions. That Elliott needs to grow up. That he's made some bad choices in his life, bad decisions, not just with the domestic violence, but just bad optics. From just the not being self-aware when you go to a weed shop, and take pictures in front of a weed shop. What do you do? Why bring that type of attention to yourself under the spotlight of being a member of the Cowboys, and certainly exposing a woman's breast at the St. Patrick's Day parade, which the NFL cited is another thing that they considered, but they didn't think it was egregious enough to suspend him for or add to a suspension. But it was something they cited and said it was showed a pattern of behavior, poor choices, and poor decisions when it comes to women. And so he needs to grow up, and certainly the organization needs to take ownership. And it should be a wake-up call for Elliott, but a wake-up call for the Cowboys that, this is not business as usual. You've taken chances on guys in the past, but this is a different time, different day and age, with social media, certainly with the commissioner and how they're handling things, that, this is not a good way of doing business.
His own father said when he was drafted that he had maturity issues and he was going to need somebody to help guide him. What do you think the Cowboys are actually going to do with Zeke Elliott as far as a guidance standpoint?
Oh, they're certainly going to, he needs a better bodyguard if go back to that bar incident, the alleged bar incident. But, yeah, he needs better people around him. He needs to not go out as much, stay home, get better guidance. He needs to grow up. And if you remember with Dez Bryant, there were a number of issues surrounding Dez Bryant, number of allegations, but he has grown up, and he's mature. He doesn't go out as much, and certainly he's all about the game, and his career has survived. There's hope that they can save Zeke, and his career can survive. Certainly he's going to get with guys like Emmitt Smith and people who are going to try to take him on his wing and be mentors and counsel him, but more importantly, he has to want it for himself. And again, this didn't start with him coming to the Cowboys. His attitude, his behavior, certainly it goes way back, probably to high school and certainly at Columbus, in Columbus, Ohio. Well, I'm sure the spotlight wasn't the same, and certainly he got away with some things there that he's not going to get away with in Dallas. And so, it has to start within, and he has to want to do it.
We're talking with Clarence Hill Jr., columnist for the Dallas-Fort Worth Star-Telegram. From a football standpoint, what does this mean for the team? Can they make the playoffs without him if he does miss all 6 games?
If he missed 6 games, it's going to be tough. I mean, the Cowboys were 13-3 last year. Great season without Tony Romo, with Dak and Zeke leading the way. But, again, they played the last-place schedule. This year they were playing the first-place schedule, and they got some tough games. And there was no way they were going to repeat 13-3 even with Zeke. It's going to be tough because, they opened with the Giants. The Giants are a team that swept them last year, one of the two two of their 3 losses were to the Giants. They opened with the Giants, and they, then they played Denver on the road, and so they need to at least go 3-3 in those 6 games without Zeke, to have a chance. And it's going to be tough because this offense is based on the running game. It's founded on the running game, not just scoring points and opening things up and making things life easier for Dak, but also for that defense, keeping that suspect defense off the field. You can't control the clock and control the ball if you don't have the league's best running back. And certainly they have some other runners who are good, who are solid. They're not Ezekiel Elliott.
Last question I'll ask you, Clarence. Do you think this suspension is going to be held up at 6 games?
Oh, I think they started 6, and if it gets reduced to 4, then maybe everybody's happy. The commissioner's happy they got something, and the Cowboys are at least happy that it's less than 6. Most times, they want to go hard, so they have something to reduce it to. So I think that if all things work out for Zeke, it'll get reduced to 4 games.
He's Clarence Hill Jr. He's a columnist at the Dallas-Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and he's got a year-long story on his hands. Thank you, Clarence.
All right, thank you, brother.
Coming up, is Derek Jeter going to be the Marlins owner? That would be fun. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday, getting you to the weekend. We are live at NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in all week. We've had guests dropping through. It's been fun. Bill Roden came by and sat on the couch and told us his theory about what he thinks players in the NFL should do if they really care about protesting Colin Kaepernick. Going to have a couple more special guests dropping through later. If you want to get in touch with me, do it through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Clinton Yates. And, of course, all guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We're going to switch things over to my favorite sport, baseball. We got some fun news from baseball this week. We got the uniform situation with Players Weekend, the dope hats and the new jerseys, and now we've got an actual thing that might make people interested in the Miami Marlins. Turns out Jeter and Michael Jordan might end up being part owners of that team. In ownership circles, this strikes me as a huge splash. Derek Jeter, obviously, straight to the Hall of Fame baseball player, very popular guy. Started the Players Tribune as well, sidebar. Fun little media venture, if you will. But I don't know if Jeets is enough to make the Marlins relevant on their own. Miami is notorious for being a bad sports town because people just got better things to do. I understand that. And because their squads haven't necessarily been all that great. We're not even going to get into the whole discussion of how Jeffrey Loria basically fleeced the entire county and city for that stadium. But I'm going to defer to you on this, Shannon, because you were down there for so long.
Yeah.
Do you think Jeter moves the needle from a butts-in-the-seat standpoint for the Marlins as a baseball team?
No.
Good
enough,
answer.
huh? I mean, it really does. I think it's cool, and I think we'll admire it more from afar. These Jeter and Michael Jordan being part of this $1.2 billion purchase of the Marlins. But as far as Marlin fans, I think initially there'll be a little excitement, but after a while, I'm sure it'll subside. But knowing what the Marlins do in the city of Miami, it would not shock me in the least that the Marlins retire both Jeter's number 2 and Michael Jordan's number 45, because that's how Miami gets down.
Number 2, Derek Jeter. Number 2. Here's the deal. If Derek Jeter wanted to make an impact as a guy after playing, managing would be the way to do that. When you think of baseball, you almost never think of owners. Like, owners aren't even a part of the sort of visual landscape of what you even consider when you're talking about the big leagues. Basketball, you think owners, they sit courtside. Football, you certainly think owners because they flash to them in the press box every once in a while. Guys like Jerry Jones have made a living out of getting showed on TV when something crazy happens. What was my man's name for the Bills? Flipping people double birds in the crowd, dancing around. That was a great owner moment. In hockey, you don't really think of owners that much, but I happen to because I happen to live in D.C., and Theodore Leonsis also happens to own the Washington Wizards. So he's a public figure. But in baseball, the owners are not glamour positions, if you will, which is fine. But I just think that if MLB really wants this to be something that's going to matter, Jeter's got to be in a position that's a little bit more visible than that.
Well, you think about what the Dodgers did with Magic Johnson and him being part of that ownership group, how they had him out front and center. Although, obviously, the biggest difference being it's Magic Johnson and it's Magic in L.A., with the town that he owns. So, of course, that's different. But if they want to, they're really going to have to put Jeter front and center when it comes to being – I would hate for the owner to be the face of the franchise, but – I mean, yeah, you have Stanton, but if you want to get some of these casual fans in there, you might have to push the Jeter thing more than you would typically want to.
Which is awkward because Jeter, for as much as he was a pitchman and as much as his appeal is there, Jeter is not some super gregarious guy. Like, I don't think charismatic. when I think Derek Jeter. And that's not a knock. That's just, he was always very, very measured, always very engaging, certainly. But he's not the dude who I'm going to see, clapping his hands behind a dugout after somebody hits a double off the wall. That's just not what I think of when I think of Derek Jeter.
If you want to get more butts in the seats for the Marlins, now that you've added Derek Jeter, I got the perfect solution.
What's that, Shannon?
Give them wicker baskets after every game. On their way out, in typical Derek Jeter fashion, give them a basket and say thank you.
You got all the bits today. We're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Friday. Nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Speaking of baskets, right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. I'd like to see Jeter in a managerial role or a coaching role. That, to me, would be a much better context for him to be involved with the Marlins. But he probably doesn't want to do that. Coaching guys after being in bigs for 20 years, that doesn't strike me as something he really wants to do. Although I would love to see Jeets out there, man. Jeets talking about baseball is what I want more of. On our weekend show that I do with Mina Kimes and Dominique Foxworth, it's called The Morning Roast, Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. to noon. You can check that out if you like. We did a discussion about athletes we'd love to see in the booth. And Jeter didn't come to my mind at the time. But now that I'm thinking about it, I would love to have Derek Jeter talking about baseball and only baseball on a regular basis. I realize that his personal life is glitzy and all that and so on and so forth. But Jeter was in the league for a long time.
Along the lines of that same conversation, what have you thought about Alex Rodriguez and his work so far in the booth?
I like A-Rod. That All-Star Game bit he did, he's got a slight corniness factor, but actually don't mind that at all. He speaks very well on camera in public, not a guy who's got some side persona. He reminds me of the Alex Rodriguez he was when he played, and he's got tremendous knowledge of the game. I genuinely like Alex Rodriguez as a baseball commentator. He knows a lot. No matter what you may think of his awkward ability to handle the press when he was in the bigs or what you think about him in terms of performance-enhancing drugs. Alex Rodriguez, in my opinion, is a tremendous baseball broadcaster, and he's not even that experienced anymore. The Miami Marlins should be a popular team. Derek Jeter owning that team probably isn't going to change that. Michael Jordan owning that team probably isn't going to change that. There's one problem as well with Miami, is that even when they win the World Series, nobody really cares either. You got to wonder how much longer baseball in South Florida is going to be a thing. Coming up, there's a guy who's been hanging around here for a while. He's kind of tall. He's a bald dude. Some people say he's got real big hands. He's a radio host, I think. Some of you might have heard of him. His name's Bomani Jones. He's coming up next on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates on ESPN Radio. Inception, kiddos.
Thanks for listening to The Right Time podcast. Please come back Monday for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Check out ESPN Films' newly released 30 for 30 podcast. From the producers of our award-winning documentary series, this is an amazing collection of sports stories you need to hear to believe. Speaking of amazing, Delta Airlines and the Fly Delta app make your travel experience amazingly easy with real-time bag tracking, e-boarding, and passport scanning during check-in. And don't forget to download 30 for 30 podcast to fill your flight with stories that will keep you coming back for more.
Welcome to The Right Time podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
About to do a great bit here, kiddos. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. We are live at NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. All guests on this program appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can hit me up on Twitter if you want to talk. The 1-800-FLOWERS Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Sitting right next to me is Bomani Jones.
Dude, I got down here. Oh, no, it was before I got down here. I saw you in D.C.
That's right.
And I was like, well, when are you getting to D.C.? And you said you get to D.C. on Tuesday. I'm like, why are you not coming on Wednesday?
Yeah.
And you said, well, I have to get there on Tuesday so I can do your show on Wednesday. And I really didn't know how that reflected upon me. And then I said to myself, yep, I'm the talent.
Hey, sometimes you got to do it, man. Sometimes you got to do it. You were obviously on PTI with Pablo. How do you like PTI? How'd that go?
That was cool, man. It's interesting to do because, like, I'm used to doing highly questionable to short. Like, we did First Take a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And those are long segments. PTI is short ones, but I'm used to doing short segments on tape. This is on tape, but kinda.
Yeah.
You know what
Right.
I mean? But I love working with Pablo, man.
That's
Like,
cool,
it's fun.
man.
We had a good time.
That's
with
cool, man. You guys got the new stuff coming up, so you're building for that. That's exciting. I want to ask you, though, because we've talked to everybody who's come through here about this. What do you think about the NABJ experience? We got a drill going off in the background.
it. Yeah, it sounds like somebody trying to get off work by 6 o'clock by hook
So,
or crook.
pardon us on that. But what have you thought about I don't know how many NABJs you've been to, but what do you think about the experience as far as being a journalist and sort of this whole game of trying to get a job in this hustle at the career fair?
Yeah, so, like, this is my 10th time to come here. The thing I can tell you about it is you ain't going to find no job here. Like, there are a couple of isolated stories of people who managed to pull that off. What you're going to do is meet people who will then help you at various points. But, like, before I was younger, like, trying to come up here and hustle jobs, right? Now I'm older, and people try to come up and hustle jobs from me. And I'm like, yo, I don't work in that department. I don't even know the people that work in that department. But if we have a good conversation, then I can help you parlay that into, like, maybe down the line. So I had a cat today I met a couple years ago. He handed me his stuff. He was real, like, I thought he was a really good baseball writer. Today, I was able to send him along to 2 editors at different spots. So he might go find no job talking to me 2 years ago, but we have a back and forth. We have a bit of a relationship. And then, like, somebody else told me, like, yeah, I'm looking for a baseball writer. Like, tell this guy, do you talk about it? Like, no, all right, I got something scheduled to talk to him about tomorrow about, right? But overall, man, I think the good thing is just rolling around and meeting people. Like, that's the game, and that's hard to do when you're in your one place.
And if you're a young journalist, that is exactly what it's about. It's not expecting to hit a homer. It's about getting in the dugout, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You meet people, somebody comes up, something comes up, you say, I remember that person. I remember that young lady. I remember that guy. And then you can plug and play when it comes to the opportunities that other people do. And you get to meet your peers in the business,
and the
which I
peers
think
will
is
do more for
very
you.
important.
The peers will do more for you than anything else. But, like, the thing that really, like, jumped it off of me when I, like, NABJ came in 2005, and there was this panel about the age limit in the NBA when they changed that up. And I asked a question that went over really, really, really well in that panel. And so after that was done, this woman came and spoke to me. Her name was Donna Britt at the Washington Post.
Donna Britt, love Donna Britt.
And she told me that she really thought the question was insightful, and I didn't know who she was at the time. Come to find out later, she's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And then the other level of it is she is married to Kevin Merida, who is the editor-in-chief at The Undefeated. Right. Now, like, by the time The Undefeated had come around, I was at a different place in my career.
Right.
But even then, I could go talk to Kevin, like, I don't know if you remember this. Like, that's what gets that right there is what gets the job done, as opposed to just, like, sticking business cards in people's hands.
You're listening to The Right Time.
And you are listening to people move stuff across the room, Jack.
With Bomani Jones. Our guest is Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here. What do you think about this Zeke situation, man?
I don't know what I'm supposed to think, to be honest. And the problem is the NFL does such a great impression of the NCAA that their punishments are so random that I don't know how. Like, I can't take a 6-game suspension to mean that they found something egregious. I don't know how they come up with these things. I don't have an answer for it. I do know this, though.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones got some splaining to do.
We just talked about that.
Because Jerry came out so hard on this and said that there was nothing. And maybe there was nothing, but I need to know why he felt that way, because otherwise he just looks like another man minimizing the notion of domestic violence. I also thought it was important the NFL put in the St. Patrick's Day parade thing there, because that by itself to me was suspendable. Now, they said that didn't meet like some aggravated standard.
The idea was that it was part of it, but it wasn't the only thing. It was sort of fudged it a little
that's
bit.
fine, but that's worth a game by itself.
I entirely agree. But the funny thing to me about this is how Jerry Jones not only looks like what you said, he also looks like he might be a little of it out of touch with his own league. How he gets put in a position to believe that, I don't know what he saw.
Yeah, but does he look out of touch with his league when his league gave Josh Brown that 1-game suspension or whatever it was, right? Does he look out of touch with his league when his league put this mandatory 6-game suspension? And if I'm not mistaken, the first time anybody has gotten the full mandatory 6 games is this one right here. It's hard to say he's out of touch with his league, but I don't know what his league is in touch with.
Well, that's my point, though, is that Jerry is also the most powerful owner in the game. You would think if one guy had any sort of clue as to what was really going to happen, it was going to be Jerry Jones. But maybe that's the reason why he didn't know.
I tell you
they
this,
had to bang it.
Raj went toe-to-toe with Kraft. Raj went toe-to-toe with Jerry Jones. Raj better have a lot of backup. Lot of backup.
You think the Cowboys can make the playoffs without Elliott if he's gone for all 6 games?
Yeah, because I think Aaron Schatz at Football Outsiders, they make a very interesting point in their almanac. I know they did it in previous years, where he said, we find that the running game is more dependent upon the offensive line in terms. So running success means more about the offensive line. Passing, so preventing sacks, has more to do with the quarterback and the ability to identify what is going on. Now, that's not to say they would be as good as they would with Zeke, but I don't think this isn't like if they lose Dak Prescott and they got to go to Kellen Moore, then I think they go 0-6. Right. Here, I think it's possible. Let's say they come out of this stretch 3-3. Will 10 games get you out the NFC? Because if so, I think they can win 7 of the next 10.
Right. Yeah, the NFC East ain't nothing either, so that's a big part of that. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in. My guest is Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. The Marlins are talking about – yeah, I know. Right now I'm the guest. I got the big mic. He got the headset.
Yeah, it's like you were house sitting for me. I came in, and now you got to move to the other room till I leave.
The Miami Marlins said that, well, there's a story out that Loria is probably going to sell to a group that includes Derek Jeter and Michael Jordan. I don't think Derek Jeter puts butts in the seats, but you were down in Miami for a long time. What do you think this move means for Marlins fans, if anything at all, on a glamour front in terms of the owner's pocket?
On a glamour front, it doesn't mean anything. The Dolphins have all these celebrity owners, and I don't think that it's gotten anybody to show up to the stadium necessarily. Now, what I would say, though, on that front is Jeffrey Loria not being the owner. That's the glamorous part.
Getting rid of that guy?
That's the shiny part in that place. You know, that's a stadium that has a statue in the outfield that typically costs more than the outfield itself does, right? Yeah, there's the reason why Dan wants to throw a parade with Loria going out of town. It's because he has been such a bad owner, an amazing hustler, but he has demonstrated a minimal interest in this team winning. And what's funny about them is they are perpetually mediocre. They are actually very rarely terrible. Like, if you go look at their record has been throughout the years, they're normally hovering in, like, the mid-70s to high 70s or low 80s. They're rarely out there in, like, a 59-103 season. You don't really get that
they don't
from them.
bottom of the barrel it.
And they've always typically got some good prospects that they tend to give away for reasons that don't really mean anything. They don't seem to function in an effort to win. I don't know how much winning they have to do to get people to go there, but I can tell you this. I went to a game there this summer. I had the best seats I've ever had at a baseball stadium. Had to be 8th row, right behind home plate, 30 bones each, an hour before first pitch.
Wow. I mean, like, that to me, though, is just the kind of thing that's embarrassing for big league baseball on some level. But at least you liked it.
But baseball made a mistake. They thought that spring training interest in baseball and a growing number of snowbirds would mean interest in a major league team. Where they messed up on is there is a lot of interest in baseball in Miami, and don't get it twisted. Keeping in mind, a lot of that interest does not necessarily speak English, right?
Right.
But they showed up with their own teams. They showed up as Yankee fans. They showed up as Met fans. They're not like Atlanta has this problem in basketball where you got all those transplants. They're not turning into Hawks fans. They showed up as whatever fans of whatever team that they were. So that's what I feel like is part of it with the Marlins.
Don't forget, baseball season is heating up, by the by. Tune in tomorrow as the Yankees host the Red Sox. Coverage begins at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. You going to hang around for another segment, Bo?
I think I can do that, my dude.
All right. Coming up, we're going to talk more about this Cowboys situation with Zeke Elliott. I'm Clinton Yates with Bomani Jones. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones, ESPN Radio. I'll say Bomani Jones one more time. We'll be back.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Penzo Performance Line. The guest today also happens to be the host. I'm Clinton Yates filling in, and Bomani Jones is sitting right next to me.
Yeah, man.
What's up, Bo?
Doing all right. I just know somebody over here taking pictures, too. I feel very watched right now.
If you want to hit me up, you can do so on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates or at ESPN Radio. Bo, what's your fame on the street level like? when you're at NABJ? Like how many? Because this is what people don't realize at NABJ is that you go and you start at a certain level.
Yes.
You get to another level, and then there's a third level where you move outside of the general sort of population, if you will, and people know who you are.
Right.
And so they yell your name in public. And you got to stop and take a lot of handshakes, which you do graciously, obviously, because that's part of the build-up. But what's it like these days for Big Bo?
I would say not to be so presumptuous about me being gracious. I think I'm largely gracious.
Okay.
I am not entirely all the way gracious. I'd say this. I didn't come in 2015. I came in 2014, and that was in Boston. I came last year, and that was in D.C. And apparently 2015 is the year that I blew up because 2016 was entirely different. And then 2017 happened, and I may or may not have run out of a few rooms because I got a tad bit claustrophobic. No, it's a little different. Like another thing about the dynamic of this you kind of got to remember is, in a lot of ways, the people on sports television are like the most, for lack of a better term, famous people who are here. Like, I like working at this network, and they're very visible people. But, like, the number of people that I actually believe are famous, like they do the kind of work that I do, like Stephen A. Smith is legitimately famous.
Yes.
There aren't that many other people here who are like, who work in this that are legitimately famous. So I don't know if I am famous, but I do feel famous when I am here.
Bill Roden is standing right next to us, so people have been coming to the desk all week. It's been a fun little radio row style type of experience. Let's switch gears here a little bit. I want to touch on the Ezekiel Elliott thing one more time because for me, the details of how this happened were particularly, I don't want to say explosive, but detailing how what his lawyers did and so on and so forth. Zeke Elliott has a legitimate reputation problem at this point.
Yes.
And there's just no way around that.
Well, some of it's earned, right? Now, I don't know what happened at that nightclub that night. The St. Patrick's Day thing, like, really well, it sticks with me because, on a couple of levels, I have been a man at that sort of age and in those sorts of places, and I know how easy it can be for people to think that sort of behavior is okay.
Right.
Like, you just think, okay, we just joking, ha, ha, ha. I'm just, like, the Real World Los Angeles season 2, right? You're like, ah, ha, ha. You think that thing is funny. And then I look back at it now, and I'm like, oh, no. That is all bad.
Right.
Like, that is terrible, and, like, if this turns into a fight, it's going to be a thing. That was the one I looked at. I'm like, ooh, I don't know. But this thing with Zeke and whatever happened in Columbus, there had been people whispering like, oh, no, this is legit, right? We'd heard those kinds of whispers there before, and we're forced to basically assume that this woman would make up a beating and take pictures of said beating and make that up also, all in the name of taking him down, which I suppose is possible. But you're asking for me to believe a lot under that set of circumstances.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here, and my guest is Bomani Jones. I think that this is such a weird situation because it's the Cowboys. And Jerry Jones is not exactly what we would call, I don't know, the most clean owner in the league when it comes to behavior.
Yes.
And I wonder whether or not, and I asked the guest this earlier, whether or not this is the one thing that might embarrass him, whether there is any shame at any point. And if this has gotten there where his star player coming off of his rookie season gets caught up in some situation in which Jerry was forced to say something that was completely untrue to the media and maybe finally will exhibit some level of shame, or is he just going to fight this like everything else? I don't know.
I think he's going to fight it because one thing, he wasn't forced to say a thing.
Right, that's my point.
Yeah, like he came out there, he felt like there was nothing. And again, I don't know what led him to believe it. The second it happened, I was like, you better be right.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to come out here on this limb, you better be right. It appears that he was not right. And I don't know where the shame would come from, though. I don't think it's there. I do not think it's here. I think he thought maybe he could strong-arm Roger Goodell. Now, we've had Schefter on the show a few times to talk about this, and Schefter always made the point that they don't want a video to turn up. And I'm wondering how much of this is that they're like, okay, we believe an assault happened, and what got him in trouble with Ray Rice was they didn't have a video. And they're like, okay, it sounds like it was this. That sounds like two games. And then they saw it, and they're like, oh, my gosh, it's always 6 games. Look at what that was. And then we're like, what do you expect it to look like? Right? Then it all becomes 6 games. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're fearful that somewhere there's a video that might wind up coming out, and if they gave no suspension and then it was a video, then what?
It's true. And I think that this was, like I said before the program, I am not in the business of praising Roger Goodell or praising the NFL, but I'm genuinely impressed with the amount of transparency and the amount of information that has come out surrounding this. That conference call had details. They showed that letter that they sent to the, that the 4 guys sent to Goodell. They all spoke on it. I'm actually pretty shocked considering how long they took that they did their due diligence and did it this well.
Yes, and my problem was, and will be. A minimum is a minimum. You put this phony minimum out here, and when it came to these other cats, people who had admitted what they have done, and there's an acknowledgement here that there is some gray, right? Like
yes.
it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea that this is false, but there is some gray. You had cats who admitted this, and they're like basically like the 1-game suspension for Josh Brown, which is, I mean, he ain't really hit her. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like what this comes down to. So yeah, I give them credit. They apparently had ducks in a row, and they decided they were going to come out here and they were going to put on a full press conference. However, this is what it's supposed to be all the time if you say that the baseline is 6 games. Because what you're establishing for me here is that photographic evidence of all this stuff, whatever, if that's 6 games, then like the median or whatever is this is kind of 6 games. Or 6 games is an extreme. And is that appropriate? I don't know. It all makes me go back and just be like, this is what happens when we cannot trust you.
Yeah.
And I don't trust them.
Do you think that the appeal will work? You think we'll get all 6?
Probably. And I would say this because I think it is beneficial for the NFL, for them to stand strong on this. And I've just never been quite sure what the system is for them to decide when somebody's suspension should be walked back.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's why ultimately I don't have as big of a problem with this is because, look, if they got to start now to be consistent, sometimes you got to make an example out of somebody.
Right.
And if it comes down to a situation like this, fine by me. That ain't got nothing to do with who I hate or who I don't hate for all you people tweeting at me and calling in. Sounding like bird brains. The point is that
bird brains.
I believe you like that one.
That's old school.
Yeah, I know. That's an Earl Yates special. That's my dad. He be saying that John all the time. But I believe her. And okay, I have no problem with the benefit of the doubt going to the victim. This is okay in many people's minds. It doesn't have to be about having it out for Zeke Elliott or for the Cowboys. It's about understanding that when it comes to sensitivity of victims and what they report, the reason why a lot of these things don't get reported in many other cases is because of what victims have to go through to defend themselves. So if this case, going forward, the NFL has decided that they're going to take that stance and say, you know what, we believe you, we'll go from there, I'm fine with that.
But we also got to establish that we started from Jump Street here with a country that has it out for women. So you talk about people wondering if you got it out for Zeke. The country has it out for women, and you see it manifest itself in so many ways and so many people going out of their way to just like, okay, but, right? It's all the okay, but. It's all the okay, but. Now, I've been running around a lot today, so I haven't checked thoroughly like what all of it is.
I was filling you in. There's a lot.
Yeah, so like I read the letter that they sent to Ezekiel Elliott. Like I need to see a little bit more of it, before I go like super hard on saying one way or another. But it is very difficult to believe that someone would be as cooperative as this woman was, who really didn't have much to gain from the way it goes. And I'm surprised she cooperated at all. It's hard to believe that somebody would go through that just for the hell of it.
I say it all the time. The first privilege is male privilege.
Oh, it is powerful, too, man.
Yeah.
Like, part of my frustration I have with white people who cannot acknowledge white privilege is I'm a man, and I can full-on tell you every day the privilege that you get from being a man, the benefit of the doubt and people's willingness to believe you on things when you were a man. And it's amazing when women talk about, women make this up sometimes. That sometimes is minuscule, because I'm not going to pretend like nobody makes it up. That would be, like, silly to say. But, man, that sliver of the pie is tiny, 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 tiny. Like, you know how sharp your knife got to be to get that sliver of the pie? You ain't cutting that with a butter knife.
There are people in this room that believe that as well, but we ain't going to get into that.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that later. Just want to thank you for agreeing with me on that. For all you people hitting me up, talking about where's Bomani. You don't know nothing about no male privilege and all this, that, and the other. 30 agrees with me on this one. So you can go back into your holes and crawl back into your little – I'm not even going to
Although you got to be fair to them. I'd be wondering where I was, too. You know what I'm saying? They can't even see your clothes in here not matching right now. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, man, I'm looking fly. Y'all don't know that.
I will give you this.
Just because you're a suits guy doesn't mean I got to be a suits guy.
You don't have to be a suits guy, but I had to get way down the I'm the talent line before I started showing up and stuff like you.
Man,
like you got these pedal pushing
I'm wearing Vans.
Camo pants
I'm wearing Vans, and I got my camo joints on. Shouts to the hundreds. Got these when I was out in Fairfax in Los Angeles last week.
And the salmon colored shirt, it is definitely salmon, and that belt that I don't really know what that is.
It's beautiful.
By the way, you said Vans. I thought you had said Vance. What you said about Jim Vance when he died was like very important sort of stuff that people here could stand to hear about the kindness of him with the people that came in to work there. And Jim Vance was everything. I'm not even from D.C., and I'm like, damn, Jim Vance died.
I was going to end the show on that, but Jim Vance was a guy who, when I was a young man interning at NBC4 Washington, trying to learn my way in this game, all he said was, you got a future in this business. And I believed him, and he followed up with that every time I saw him as an intern that summer. Jim Vance was my favorite news broadcaster of all time. He passed away recently, and I'm sure as heck going to miss him. And being here at NABJ, as Bomani just said, makes you think of all the people that help you along the way and what you can do to make sure that you're doing your part as well. Coming up.
You're welcome, Clinton. Oh, that's not what you meant. Oh, sorry about that. My bad.
I was trying to dunk on me, but there was a foul.
Might have been a little
he
bit
tried to dunk
presumptuous.
on me, but I fouled him, and he missed it. That's what happened.
I'm going to go to the line.
That's what happened. You're going to go to the line.
line.
Let's see what the ball lies. It's ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates. He's Bomani Jones. Like I've been telling you for a while. If you travel for business, stop wasting your time pricing your flights and hotels at the same old suites you used to go to. The only site you need is Upside.com. It's quick and easy for Upside to show you the exact flights you're looking for and the big name hotels you want to stay at. You can buy them separately or bundle them together. The more you bundle, the more you save. The bigger the gift card you receive to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business travel package using Upside. Their concierge level of service is second to none. You get the VIP treatment while still paying low prices, fam, and their expert navigators are always available. 24/7 through phone, chat, social, and email to help anytime. Upside's the real deal for buying your business trips. You got to give them a try. And right now, when you use your promo code BOMANI, you're guaranteed to get at least a $100 Amazon gift card on your package purchase. That's code BOMANI to get a $100 gift card free. Upside.com, the better way to business travel. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. We are live at NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to hit me up? Just like everybody else, do so through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Sitting right next to me right now is the guy I used to say was the smartest guy in the business, one Kevin Frazier of Entertainment Tonight. And the reason I say that is because Kevin made the decision to walk away from a big-time job at the company I currently work for, and he went west to get in the entertainment business. We're at NABJ, so I'm going to ask you career stuff, not to get too personal with it.
We can.
But
we can talk.
Tell me a little bit about what that decision was like when you made it and the thought process in terms of saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to entertainment. Sports is behind me.
Well, it's interesting because, at the time, and when you work at SportsCenter, you're in the sports bubble, and you believe that, this is all anybody thinks about. And, getting out to L.A. and listening to the people talk about there's a different universe. You're not going to be talking to men now. You're going to be talking to women. And also, though, the thing that really kind of cemented it for me is my then boss, when I had dinner with her, she said to me, what did that little SportsCenter show do last night? What were the numbers that little SportsCenter show did? And I was like, we killed it. We had a 0.9. I was like, in ratings, 0.9, almost a 1.0
yes.
is a decent cable number. And she said, Entertainment Tonight did a 7.0. It's a different audience, Kevin Frazier.
Yeah.
And it kind of made my eyes roll back in my head and, my eyes light up and understand it's a big universe out there.
This is particularly funny because the other person sitting right next to us is a producer on SportsCenter, so this is a funny in-the-room joke as well. Sorry, my bad. I didn't get your title right. Anyway, we've been at NABJ. I would like to know a little bit about your history here because we've been having people through talk about what this event is like, what it means to be a part of it. How many years have you come, if at all, and what do you think about, connecting with the youth in the business at this point?
I've been coming to NABJ since '95, and it was very important for me to connect with folks and everyone. It's how I know a lot of the people from ESPN and knew them beforehand. And so to watch everyone grow, and move up in this business, it was one of the things that, like, Stu and I did every year. And, I was just downstairs with Stu Scott's niece, Tamara, who's in the business now, and she's here at NABJ. And so it's important to kind of come, the fellowship, to meet and greet with everybody and keep in touch over the years. It's so important. Galen Gordon, who's your coordinating producer.
This guy right here, looking good, by the way.
Yeah, I've known him, and we have been coming to this NABJ conference for almost 20 years. And so it's just an important thing because the connections, Galen would call me when I go on SportsCenter now in my entertainment with my entertainment hat on, it's because Galen will call me directly.
Right.
And we've become close and we're friends. And so you have your group of people, Michaela Pereira, who's on CNN, Michael Eaves, who works there now. There's a lot of folks. And so it's just the connectivity is unbelievable.
We're talking with Kevin Frazier of Entertainment Tonight here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Friday. We're live at NABJ from New Orleans. Don't forget, you can tune into an AL East rivalry on Sunday Night Baseball as the Yanks host the Red Sox. Coverage of Sunday Night Baseball begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, and the ESPN app, and at 8 p.m. on ESPN.
You know what's funny? I want to tell you this is that before I caught my flight, as I was riding home from work, I was listening to you because I listen to The Right Time. It's my show,
right?
And, so I was riding home. So it's funny us sitting here now and then us meeting when
Yes.
when I walked into NABJ. You were with a group of people I know, and we sat down and met, and that's how NABJ works because now we know each other.
Exactly. No,
we're connected.
You're exactly right, and he embarrassed me a little bit in a good way because I said I reintroduced myself at the end of the convo, and Kevin just said, "I know who you are, Clinton," and I was like, "Thank you,
right.
I appreciate that."
I didn't want to say, I was just listening to you on the way here, so it's a fascinating little circle, but I got to have my sports fix.
I hear you, and let me ask you about that specifically. And we don't have to stay on the media stuff forever, but I do want to know what you think as somebody now on the entertainment side of the way that diversity has developed on the sports side from what you see from afar. We had Steve Weiss from the NFL Network here early, and I made the point. I was like, look, he was the guy that asked Colin Kaepernick about him sitting during the first national anthem in the preseason game. Colin talked to him because they had a relationship. That doesn't happen if you don't have reporters of color in your press corps. And more importantly, it's not just about the optics, it's about the talent and the merit of the stories themselves.
Sure. I mean, I think what everybody has to understand is, traditionally, if you were an athlete and you go into a locker room and you look around, there are, for the most part, no one who looks like you, but not only no one who looks like you, but that is much older than you also.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird dynamic, and the way you're expressing yourself or the things you may do and the way you may talk may not work or jibe with the people who are covering you. So it's important because when you add in the diversity, then the message gets out in the right way. And I'll tell you, if there was ever a time, I was working in Cincinnati. I was a weekend sports anchor. The Cincinnati Reds were taking on the Braves at the height of it when Deion came in town.
Yeah.
And Deion was the man, and he was sitting at a table, and he was playing Nintendo Game Boy with Steve Avery. And they were sitting there, and they're playing it, and they were talking, and everybody was standing around. And Deion was like, I don't know why all y'all are standing around here. I'm not talking. And then he looked up, and he said, you know what, though? I'm talking to that young brother right there. And, I'm like, yeah, we are. And we got up and we went out and we sat down and we did the sit-down interview, and it was amazing. And it started our relationship to this day. I've worked with him at NFL Network and everything like that. And I don't think that he was trying to exclude anyone, but I think it was his way of expressing that, you know what, I'm going to connect with this young man who I think we have similar kinds of lifestyles.
Last thing I'll ask you, Kevin, what's the biggest difference, aside from ratings, between covering the entertainment world and the sports world?
The publicists. There's no publicists in the locker room after a game. So, you could walk in and you could say to Shaq, you missed 4 free throws down the stretch. What's going on now? This is 7 games in a row. And if you look back to last year, how you guys choked in the playoffs, you cannot go up to Brad Pitt and say, that last movie bombed, bro, and this one is looking a little shaky. How are you going to pull it together so that you get, out of a hole right now? You can't do that. You can't go in, And I will tell you, there's a very famous guy who I was doing a movie junket with. The movie was terrible. It was terrible, and it tanked. And you walk in and he says, "How was the movie? How was it, man? Come on, you had to love it, didn't you?" And I was like, "It's like nothing I've ever seen before," because you can't come in and say, "No, bro, you were terrible yesterday.
Right?
You were 2 for 24."
That's the big difference. He's Kevin Frazier. He's on Entertainment Tonight. Used to be on ESPN. I'm so happy he's joined us here again. Coming up, if you haven't heard, Jerry Jones has some explaining to do. Thank you, Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I'm Clinton Yates. It's The Right Time on ESPN Radio, filling in for Bomani Jones.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in on a Friday, taking you to the weekend. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. And if you want to say something smart in my mentions on Twitter, use the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN. Just in case you all forgot, I reserve the right to embarrass you in front of your friends and family every single time you get in my mentions. If you come with something crazy, I will check you. Anyway, Would like to thank all our guests today. We're live at NABJ in New Orleans. It has been a very fruitful week. Just to go behind the curtain a little bit here, we didn't have this plan until we got here. And we decided we were going to try to do a live broadcast and get a lot of people through to let people know what actually happens down here. So if you're a young person in the business listening, or somebody that's been trying to find a way to jump into the journalism world in any capacity, NABJ is a place to do that. I'm not on a board. I'm not one of the members. This is not some shill job. I've been here. It's only my second time here. But I can tell you that the difference in my life as a result of having been here is palpable as far as this business is concerned. That's why I've been asking everybody who's come through to this couch to talk about the experience. Because one day, this person could be you. Albert Breer joined us to talk about the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott's suspension. Bill Rhoden, the great New York Times and undefeated writer, joined me on the couch as well to discuss things. Clarence Hill Jr. of the Dallas-Fort Worth Star-Telegram came by to discuss the Cowboys as well. The host of this program, Bomani Jones, sat down for a couple segments. That was fun. And Kevin Frazier joined us late. He's of Entertainment Tonight, but he used to be a SportsCenter anchor as well. I'd like to thank everybody who came on as far as guests are concerned this week. I thought it was a very fruitful experience, and I, for one, am happy about it. But, Shannon, tell them what they might have missed.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. Now, if you haven't heard.
All right, the big story of the day, of course, is the 6-game suspension for Dallas Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott. And if you haven't heard, here is Clinton Yates earlier today on The Right Time discussing the Elliott suspension and why Jerry Jones may have some explaining to do.
When they opened training camp, Jones said, I have reviewed everything, and there is absolutely nothing, not one thing, that had anything to do with domestic violence. And then he went on to say, my opinion is there's not even an issue over he said, she said. There's not even an issue there. I mean, look, I don't mean to laugh, but in the face of everything we just saw come out from the NFL, that was obviously a bald-faced lie. Like, I don't know how you can square saying that none of it was about domestic violence if the entirety of the issue was about that, and the independent investigator said as much. I mean, that is literally just turning a blind eye or being willfully ignorant of what actually went down or didn't go down. But come on. This investigation is thorough, my guy. This has not happened in a way that one could not say was transparent, could say was not transparent. I don't know that I've seen this much discussion around a domestic violence case in the NFL pretty much ever. Peter Harvey had a lot to say. So if you're Jerry Jones at this point, you know, look, I don't want to say that he's intentionally being dishonest. I don't know that. Maybe when he was in Oxnard, when training camp first opened, there were things he didn't know. But when he comes back last week and says, I don't anticipate a suspension, well, Jerry Jones doesn't have a very good grip on what's going on with the league office. Which is shocking to me because Jerry Jones is one of, if not the most powerful owner in the league. He's got the biggest stadium in the league. He's probably the owner that if he walked down the street would be most identifiable as who he actually is. And he's also got his own personal history regarding personal conduct. You can do that when you're an owner. That's how that works. I just wonder whether or not Jones is going to end up being a factor in how the rest of this appeal situation works out. You could tell from the tone of his voice in that last clip that my man is a little bit more reticent to sort of talk. He said as much, and that's understandable. If he wants that guy on the field, he's going to keep his mouth shut.
All right, in regards to an appeal, Clinton, there were 6 games handed out for Elliott. The plans to appeal, do you think that 6 games will get reduced?
No, I genuinely don't. I think if they're going to make an example of him, they're going to make an example of him. And if they've got what they've got and they went this far to begin with on that, they're not going to reduce it.
All right, transitioning to the NBA, where the Baldashians are coming to an NBA video game near you.
Yes, Queen.
NBA 2K18 has announced that the Big Baller brand shoes will debut in NBA 2K, and the Zo2s will be in the video game.
The Baldashians will reign forever and a day. I like that. That's fun. That's the level of LeVar Ball I need. I don't need LeVar Ball yelling at referees on a basketball court. I need him selling shoes and selling a dream of America.
All righty.
What else can we ask for?
All right, really quickly before we get out of here, I think we might have broken a right time record. Since you've been in New Orleans, can you guess the number of guests that we had on these past 3 shows?
A dozen.
18.
Wow. 18. I feel like I should get some sort of a medal for that. We'll see. I'll reward myself tonight. want to thank everybody for tuning in this whole week. It's been a fun one live at NABJ in New Orleans. Doing the best we can out here. Coming up, Jason Fitz and Jordan Rogers. I'm Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones. It's the right time on ESPN Radio, kiddos. Safety first this weekend.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back Monday for more. And don't forget to listen to the Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin.